Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have got my first Disney Mirrorverse tier list that I want to share with you. I'm very excited to do this. It's been a while coming. Let's just dive straight into it. I'm going to be ranking all the characters from S tier through to, I know it says D tier here, but I'm actually going to get rid of D tier and I'm going to explain why. Delete. Okay, in my opinion, no character in this game deserves to be that low. I feel like all the characters in Disney Mirrorverse are very usable. And to me, a D tier is just a bit harsh, a bit too harsh on these characters in this game. So, without further ado, let's get into the tier list. Okay, so we're starting with Zurg. Now, easy one here. Zurg is the best range character in the game. If you hold the trigger down, he's just going to plant his feet and basically unload his heavy machine gun. It does so much damage, it inflicts shock, which then does more damage. He's got an amazing special which can root. His signature ability is actually probably one of the best and one of the ones I would put signets in. Definitely very, very solid character, and we start the tier list off very, very well. Okay, next up we've got Mickey Mouse. Now, Mickey Mouse straight into the S tier, in front of Zurg. Probably, in my opinion, top 3 in the game. He's just phenomenal. The best healer, with his cooldown being 10 seconds, so he heals so much, so fast. He reduces the cooldowns of the characters you're playing with, so he makes them reach their specials quicker, which is amazing. He stuns, he knocks back, you can interrupt specials. He buffs your team as well based on his talents. So he does everything. And yeah, no, hands down, one of the best characters in the game. Carried me through the story, carried me through the whole game. He's got a tower as well, so yeah, Mickey Mouse S tier. Moving on, we've got Evil Queen. So I'm going to put Evil Queen in the A tier. Evil Queen is a recent discovery, I would say, for me. I didn't really have her leveled that much. If you can stack Heartsbane charges, which you can, her healing is insane. It does so much. It's probably, I think it's the second highest heal in the game. You know, it's higher than Mickey's, but obviously Mickey is a quicker cooldown. She also poisons on that special. Definitely level your Evil Queen. Alongside Tiana, she's the best support for the Royalty Tower. So very useful character, got a lot of utility in the game, deserves the spot in the A tier. Moving on, we've got Jack Sparrow. Now, unfortunately, Jack is the first character to go into the C tier. For me, Jack just doesn't do enough. He gains curse charges and then he heals. It's a little bit like Evil Queen in that sense, you know. She's going to heal more based on Heartsbane charges. Jack's going to heal more based on these curse charges, but he doesn't get curses like quickly. It takes like 5 seconds to get one curse charge, and his heal is a bit lackluster. He does have a pretty good cleanse, but honestly, you know, he's not going to get you through end game content. Generally speaking, he's someone I would avoid. You know, he is in the Seafaring Tower, but I'd say Frank is better than him. Right, then we've got Ariel. God, we've got a lot of S tiers to start with. Ariel is hands down the best melee in the game. She does everything. She gains attack buffs, which she keeps for, you know, basically throughout the battle. So she's going to get stronger as the battle goes on. She cleanses, she self-heals, she can purge if you equip the talent. She has a huge area of effect with her special, which does a massive amount of damage. Of the melees, she actually does have one of the lowest offense, but you don't really notice it because of all the attack buffs she gives herself, and generally speaking, very, very durable as well. She has a reasonable amount of health, so you can kind of leave her, you know, if you want. You don't have to operate her. Unlike some other melees, you definitely have to operate. So, in my opinion, Ariel is the best melee and worthy of S tier. You know, top of the range of S tier. Right, moving on. We've got Anger next. Now, just get him there. Now, Anger. He's situationally okay. Like, he's situationally quite good. He can do a lot of damage, but you need a lot of enemies on the field for him to do a lot of damage. He has such a chaotic kit. He gains a lot of attack buffs based on enemies, but if he reaches a certain amount of attack buffs and then you use special, he gets rid of them all for like a really small amount of damage. So you kind of don't want him to lose these attack buffs, but if you get to a certain number of them, which is 10, unless you equip one of his talents, which takes to 15, he'll then explode and you'll lose the attack buffs. And in any case, he can do massive damage, but it's quite difficult to get to the massive damage, okay? And unfortunately, I just think when he compares to other melees, it just doesn't stack up. Okay, moving on, we got Merida. Now, Merida, she is just a pretty lackluster ranged. I'm going to be brutally honest, I don't really rate ranged as a class in this game, so my tier list is a little bit skewed in that range generally don't feature really that high. We've got a couple there, but you know, like Zerg for example. But Merida, you know, you're gonna need a decent team around her. She can do some decent crits, but just a fairly basic ranged, and you know, doesn't really deserve to be any higher than the C tier. Dory, oh Dory. So, as part of the Kabam content creator program, I got to test a lot with Dory. Now, situationally, I think she's got some use. I really think her cleansing, you know, it might really come in handy in raids, but she just plays like this really dumb, reckless role. Like, I don't particularly like to control my supports, and you have to control Dory. She just runs into battle. You know, she plays this mid position, which feels very close because she has this heavy attack which needs to be touching an enemy to actually knock back. So she plays this really weird high up support, like tank role sort of. It's a bit of a mess really, and she can't really heal herself very well. She just, for me, like, she actually has an okay heal for, you know, the rest of the team, but for me, she's just a reckless character, really. And if you're playing with Dory, you're going to have to really control her. She has got 2 towers, but let's be honest, like, you've got Hero and Scrooge in the high-tech tower. You're going to be using them all day over her. And Frank is just a better support as well, so she doesn't deserve to be any higher than this. Maybe with raids, we'll see her boost up, but for now, sorry, Dory, but very embedded in the C tier. Okay, then we got Anna. Now Anna, I think Anna is going to be so important in raids, and I love Anna's kit. I think she's got so much cool stuff within her kit. If you hold heavy attacks, you can gain an indestructible buff, which can, you know, as anyone knows, indestructible buff means you don't get hit. She can gain a lot of armor with her kit. She dishes out all these debuffs. Now, she doesn't gain as much from attack buffs as other melees do, but there's just so much going on in the kit, and her special's awesome as well. Her special has a big area of effect. The only reason Anna isn't super top tier is actually really because just her damage output isn't that great. She doesn't hit very hard, but she's very durable. So unlike certain other melees, like, you know, your Scars, your Aladdins that have high DPS, she doesn't really carry that as much as them, but she is very durable, and you can leave her alone. You can have the AI control her, and she'll do a reasonable job as AI control. So yeah, A tier for me. Baloo, okay. Baloo for me, if paired with Wally, goes up a tier. He goes into A tier. By himself, I'm going to put him in B tier. Now, I have no idea why Baloo is rated so poorly in other people's tier lists, to be honest. Fantastic tank. Like, genuinely is a really good tank. His cargo charges, you know, can heal, can give armor, and he gains a lot of them. He works so well with Wally because these cargo charges, as they expire, you know, he gains a lot of armor, but it's quite niche to do double tank, and you'll probably want to run Wally with someone like Mini instead. But Baloo as a character, I just think he's a very, very solid tank. So yeah, B tier for me. Now moving on, we've got Baymax. Baymax, solid B tier. I like him. There's a couple of things with Baymax. One is he isn't as tanky as I'd want him to be. He doesn't seem to. You know, his AI seems to get hurt quite easily. He's got a really cool armor field. He's got a really cool special which can stun, but the stun only lasts for literally 2 seconds. It's more like a disruptor. You know, it just makes sure enemies can't use specials, so he's very good at interrupting. But the stun doesn't last very long. His armor fields can last up to 8 seconds if you've got talent equipped, and then he's going to gain armor, he's going to give out armor if characters are standing in that field. But yeah, I just think there are better tanks, right? And he's very solid, but you know, a little bit like Blue, I just think he's just shy of being that next tier up. Okay, moving on, we've got Belle. Oh dear. So yeah, poor Belle. This is a character which some people say is very good, and I think it's because they look at her talents, and the talents can boost her healing. But what they don't realise is that Belle has probably one of the lowest health pools of any support, which means that she doesn't heal for much, and that's all really she does. That's all her kit does is like heal. She doesn't have anything in her kit really that stands out to me like some other supports do that buff your team in any way. She's needed for story mode, but to be quite frank, like, unless you're a completionist, you don't need to put that much into her. For me, yeah, she's just very, very lackluster. Probably one of the worst supports, you know, in the game. And yeah, that's why she is kind of comfortably in the C tier. All right, Buzz. I'm going to put Buzz in the B tier. Now, I think Buzz is a good range, okay? Like, I as I said, I'm not a big fan of range, but I think Buzz is a decent range. He can stun, he's got high damage, he's got some nice stuff. He shocks, he does quite a lot of damage with his crit hits. You could definitely argue he's an A tier character, but yeah, as I said, range isn't, I'm not the biggest fan of them. So yeah, maybe I'll just bump him up a little bit on the B tier. Okay, Hook. Now, I think people will be surprised about this, but here we go. Hook is underrated. I'm sorry. There are so many tier lists out there that put Hook right down at the bottom, and to be quite frank with you, I don't know why. I really don't know why. Like, you can say that, you know, he's not as good as other melees, like, you know, we've got here Anna and Ariel already ahead of him, but he's very solid. Once he marks an enemy, he can do so much damage on that enemy. His special is probably one of the hardest hitting specials I've seen in the game, if it can crit. I mean, I've seen a lot of footage recently of Hook doing insane damage, really, on that special. You know, and it can knock back as well. I think Hook is underrated, and yeah, he's a solid B tier addition for me. Right, moving on, we've got Donald. So I'm going to put Donald in the B tier. Now, this is a difficult one for me because I don't think there's that many players in the game with a high level Donald, okay? He is very, very difficult to acquire, and that shouldn't downgrade him on tier lists, but until he's easier to acquire, because you can only get him through Alliance Crystals at the minute, and to get Alliance Crystals, you have to spend your laurels on them, and if you're an endgame player, or if you're working for endgame, you'll want to be spending those on T4 gem shards instead. So he's in a difficult spot, right? You have to sacrifice, you know, getting characters potentially up to level 80 and level 90 in order to get him. But he has a good kit. I think he could potentially go higher than this, but there's just not a lot of footage around to suggest that he is worthy of the spots above, because there's not a lot of players in the game that have him at a decent level. He does give himself defense buffs, he can convert them into attack buffs, and he can gain a ton of armor. His signature ability is probably one of the ones that really stands out to me. He can give himself so much armor if he's got it at really high level. So yeah, I think Donald's a decent addition to the B tier. Okay, Elsa. Now, I'm going to put Elsa in the C tier. She can do like a decent amount of damage for a ranged character, but her special's very lackluster. She like puts down some ice and, you know, freezes the ground or whatever in a circle, and it does a little bit of damage if you're standing in that circle, but compared to other character specials, especially ranged specials, like, she's got one of the worst specials in my opinion. So it really comes down to her damage as a ranged, which is reasonable, but, you know, I can't see any reason why I'd want to play with Elsa, and I can't really see any reason why I'd rate her any higher than the C tier. Okay, moving on. We've got Eve as well. I'm going to say Eve is, you know, Eve's one of the reasons actually, like, I scrapped the D tier, because I think she gets unfairly treated, but it's not enough to get her out of the C tier. She had a little mini rework, so she does a bit more damage now. She's got some cool shock, she's got some shield as well, but it's not enough for me to warrant her being rated any higher. Okay, then we got Simba. Oh, I love this guy. Right, so Simba, you know, top 3 tanks in the game in my opinion. Simba does so much. He does everything. He's also like a genuine tank because he can lure. Now, a lot of tanks in this game don't have luring abilities, so this is why I think Simba's so valuable, and I think he will be really, really valuable in raids. He lures, he goes indestructible, he gains so much armor when he gets hit by melee and tank enemies. He is, you know, his weakness is ranged. However, pairing with someone like Violet, that weakness goes away. He is just a phenomenal tank. I'm so glad he's good in this game, because in the other game I play, he's pretty lackluster. Yeah, definitely an S tier tank in my opinion. Now moving on to the best tank in the game, the better tank, it's Wally. Okay, now I'm actually going to put Wally ahead of Mickey. Wally, hands down the best tank in the game. He makes so many characters better. Like, I talked about Baloo going up into the A tier, that's all due to Wally. You know, we'll get to Minnie as well. Minnie is the best melee in the game when she's paired with Wally, right? Wally just gives out so much armor because characters paired with him, I think it's when you've got one of his talents equipped, so every time a buff expires on one of your teammates, he gives them armor, which is an insane ability. Now, if we talk about a special, it has a very, very short cooldown. It's I think it's 9 seconds. It gives him 5 defense buffs, so it gives him, you know, basically it gives him armor when they expire. Once he gets to a level of armor, it's almost impossible to get him down, to break him down. Now, he's very difficult to heal, which is why he's very reliant on having his signature ability unlocked, because his signature ability actually allows him to heal. But you'll be surprised, he might take a lot of beating in the beginning, but once he gets to that point of armor gain, it's almost impossible to take him down, to get him to his genuine health. And as long as you've got healers on the team, he's going to get heal charges, and then he's going to convert those heal charges into genuine health once he's reached 3 and uses a special. So yeah, hands down, best tank. Now, moving on to Frank. Where am I going to put Frank? Okay, I'm going to put Frank in the B tier. Now, Frank is a character that I don't like playing with because I don't like handling my supports, like I said with Dory, but he's not as reckless as Dory. He actually keeps his distance. Means you're going to have to control him though, because Frank only heals in his circle. And in order to get the most out of that, you're going to have to like control him and bring him towards your characters in the thick of battle. So if you're playing with, melees and tanks, you have to run him into the middle, drop his healing circle to heal them. His circle actually does quite a lot more. Like, it can root the enemies that are standing in it. He'll give critical damage debuffs, and he'll give some additional resistance to like ranged, I think, if you are standing in his circle. So he's actually a decent character, but he's like, really depends on player skill and a bit awkward to control. And because he only heals in his circle, it's why I've put him in the B tier. I just think he's a little bit more hassle than perhaps some of the other supports. So yeah, sorry Frank, you're in the B tier. Now moving on, we got Gaston. I'm going to put Gaston in the A tier. As I said, it's hard for me to justify ranged going up tiers, but Gaston, does so much damage. He's actually a very, very solid ranged. If you hold his heavy attack, it'll wound, and then you use his special, it'll do insane amount of damage. He's used in dungeons a lot. He's also got some tower use, so he's very, very utilized in the game, and just generally a decent character. So yeah, Gaston very much deserves his A tier position. Then we've got Genie. Now Genie's a difficult one. I'm going to put Genie in the C tier. So Genie has like good properties for attack, very good properties. So he can lure on his special, and he can go indestructible on his core ability. So once he reaches thresholds of 75%, 50%, and 25% health, once he loses that health, he then goes indestructible. And, if you pop his special off, he can lure. So he can actually be a very, very solid tank. However, Genie is only really, really solid in one encounter battles. So what I mean by that is, if you're doing a mission which has like multiple rooms, he's a rubbish tank, because he's going to hit those thresholds quite quickly. It's hard for him to stay above those thresholds, in my opinion. And once you get to that last room, he's pretty much a dead man walking. But it makes him pretty good in dungeons. It makes him pretty solid in dungeons. He doesn't really hit very hard for a tank. And yeah, it's hard to justify him going up a tier, because he's also got no tower use either. Anyways, moving on, we've got Goofy. I'm going to put Goofy in the B tier. So Goofy is actually pretty decent ranged. He can stun, I believe. He can ricochet with his special. He's got very, very high focus, so he can crit for quite a lot of damage. As a range, he does a decent amount of damage. He can also, I think he can remove armor or put armor blocks on, on characters, which is pretty good. So as a range goes, he does have some interesting stuff with his kit, and he is quite useful, but similar to Donald, he is quite hard to acquire. I'd say Goofy is like B tier, sort of bottom of B tier. Moving on, we got Hades. I might skip on Hades because I'm not a beta player, so I haven't had any experience of using Hades. A lot of tier lists place him in this sort of C tier region, but it's hard for me to justify placing him, so I'm just going to skip him for now. I haven't seen enough of him to make a judgment, if I'm being truthfully honest, so I'm going to skip him. Hercules. So Hercules is going to go into the B tier. Now, Hercules is interesting. He can gain so many attack buffs if he's attacking, a single target, and also his special gives a load of attack buffs if you've got a bunch of enemies on the field. So, if you're fighting elementals, he's going to get quite a lot of attack buffs, which lasts for, I think, 10 seconds possibly. So he's a solid melee. He does quite a lot of damage. Like, he's one of the harder hits in melees, and his special does a really decent amount of damage. But the fact he loses attack buffs that he gains from his core ability as soon as he moves enemy, it's kind of annoying. He's a decent melee, and I think he's a reasonable B tier melee. Okay, moving on, we got Hero. Now, I'm going to put Hero in the top of the A tier. So Hero for me, you know, he's got 2 towers, he's got a lot of use, buffs your team a lot. If he connects on his special, he can really buff your team, makes healers do a better job of healing, and just, you know, like Mickey, if you've got talents equipped, he makes your team much better. My one issue with Hero is his heal. He has a very weak heal. Now, he does a lot more in his kit than just heal, which is why he's very much a solid A tier. I'd say solid A plus at the top of this tier, but he's not S tier for me. He just doesn't do enough with that heal. In my opinion, he's nowhere near as good as the supports in the S tier. Okay, so then we got Ian. Unfortunately, Ian is in the C tier. So Ian, just a reasonable support. He's used in dungeons, but there are just better characters to use in dungeons. You normally have a choice of him, Gaston, Scar, or Baloo. All of them are better than him. And there's so many better supports in the game. So for me, yeah, he's just pretty lackluster and belongs in the C tier. Jack Skellington. Now I am going to rank Jack. I think I've seen enough of Jack to make a solid decision on him. I think Jack is, you know, probably the best character in the game. I know I don't have him, so it's hard for me to say that. But I've done some calculations on his heal, and it's insane. He also buffs characters and makes them better. He makes Maui an S tier tank because of how Maui's kit works. He also makes, you know, characters like Aladdin really good. He can purge buffs. He's got an exceptional heal, reasonably low cooldown for it as well. He also gives out a ton of attack buffs. I just can't wait to get my hands on him. Now moving on, we've got Judy. I'm going to put Judy in the B tier. Judy has a really cool special. She can root for 10 seconds, which is massive. She also does a decent amount of damage. She's a nightmare when you're playing against her, you know, when she's the fractured. She does more than some of the other ranged around her. And yeah, I'm going to say bottom of B tier, like where I'm going to put all the other ranged. Maleficent. Oh dear. Okay. I know some people like Maleficent, but I don't see it. I just really don't see it. She can do some decent burn damage, and the one thing she's really got going for it is the fact that she can hit all enemies. So that's really cool as a ranged, but it's not enough to take her up into the B tier in my opinion. She's clunky, she's slow to attack. I feel like quite a few ranged just take their time with the basic attacks. So she just feels awkward to play with. I'm not a fan. You're going to need her for the story, so I have her reasonably leveled. But as far as characters go, just, yeah, she's a bit meh. We've got Maui. Okay. So Maui's an interesting one. I would say when paired with Jack Skellington, Maui is in this S tier. He is on the verge of A tier, I think. So I'm going to put him next to Baloo. Okay. My reasoning for this, I want to put Maui in the A tier, but his AI is just so bad. He is just a very frustrating character because he can be amazing. He can be so good. So with Jack Skellington, because of Jack's trick buffs at the start of combat, Maui then gains his own defense buffs, which he can then convert into armor. So basically Maui gains defense buffs when other enemy characters gain buffs. And he then gains up to 15 defense buffs, and I think I've seen him with more. But once you use his special, he converts all of that into armor and gives it to your team. So he's amazing for buffing your team in certain situations, which means situationally he can be phenomenal. But it's just he's just a frustrating one because his AI is so stupid. It means you have to control him quite a lot of the time. And he's really squishy for a tank. So you have to control him. If you don't, the AI is also stupid because his heavy attacks give him defense buffs, so his AI often uses the heavy attacks to build up his defense buffs, which sounds nice, but it just means he barely ever dodges. So he just gets hit all the time, and he's just very squishy. So yeah, I want to rank him higher. I love the film Moana, so you know Maui's one of my favorite characters. But I'll say this: I managed to complete the game with Maui, but it was a struggle at times. Okay, moving on. We've got Mike. Now I'm gonna put Mike quite near the top of the C tier. I like Mike. I do. I like him certainly better than some of the supports in this class, in the C tier as well. He doesn't heal that much. He does have a heal mechanic, but it's very small. Instead, he gives armor to the team, and it's a decent amount of armor. He gives 10% armor to the team, but there's just better supports, plain and simple. And he doesn't have that many useful traits. I think he is in the tech tower, but you know, you've got Hero and Scrooge to contend with, so they'll be like Dory there. You wouldn't want to really use him. Minnie. So Minnie goes straight to the top of A tier. Now she's S tier when she's paired with Wally. As I said, she actually goes ahead of Ariel when you're pairing her with Wally, because she gains so much armor, and it's fundamentally because of how her kit works. She gives herself so many attack buffs and focus buffs, and then once they expire, he converts them into armor. So this pairing is probably one of the best synergies in the game. However, when she's not paired with Wally, she is the squishiest melee in the game, and yeah, it's kind of sad. She just takes a couple hits and she's dead. Because of how much damage she can do, her damage output is probably the best out of any melee in the game. Because of that, and she's got a really cool special. She can stun, she can put burn on the enemies. She's very fun to play with. I would say she is very, very solid. Quite unfortunate to miss out on being in the S tier. And some people might disagree with me, but as I said, she is, you know, comfortably above Ariel in the S tier if she's paired with Wally, okay? Hard to acquire as well. That's the other thing. You've got to be a Mega Whale or a Kraken to even get her above Astral 1, okay? Right, moving on, Mr. Incredible. I'm going to put Mr. Incredible next to Simba. Yeah, unbelievable tank. Basically a melee. He hits so hard for a tank. You know, he also can knock back using his heavy attacks if he's got kinetic knockback, so you can interrupt specials, you know, even of bosses with his heavy attack, which is just amazing. He gives himself a ton of armor. He gives himself loads of defense buffs as well. Pair him up with Violet as well. You know, I got to test these two together, and there was just so much synergy between them. Yeah, I love Mr. Incredible, and there's a reason why a lot of players use him and rate him so highly. Right, moving on. Oh dear, we got Mulan. Yeah, sorry Mulan. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Mulan. She has no knockback. Yes, her special is okay. It can actually do a decent amount of damage if you've got a number of enemies on the field, but there's no knockback in her kit. She's very squishy. Like, I leveled her for a dungeon when I first started playing this game, and oh, she just kept dying on me, which was, you know, agony. It was one of the worst dungeons I've ever played. I've had only bad experiences with Mulan. So Mulan fans, I'm sorry, she's just the worst melee in the game. She's also got no traits, okay? She's got no traits whatsoever, so she'll be useless for raids as well. I can guarantee it. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. Okay, moving on, we've got Oogie. Okay, I'm going to put Oogie in the A tier. I think Oogie is a very, very good tank. Very, very solid tank. As far as tanking ability goes and being controlled by the AI, I do think Oogie's pretty good. His bugs as well. He's a very unique kit. His bugs are awesome. Lots of damage. He lays down attack debuffs as well. So, yeah, I think Oogie is very, very solid. Right. Rapunzel. Rapunzel is going into the B tier. I think slightly underrated, actually. She doesn't have kind of an amazing kit, but she can give herself loads of attack buffs, and she can keep them all the time. I know she loses them when she uses a special. The special hits very, very hard. She can also self-heal as well. and she's actually quite usable. Like she plays well. I do like Rapunzel. Okay, Scar. Now, personally, I am not a big fan of Scar, but I recognize his usefulness, so I'm going to put Scar in the A tier. I'd probably like to put him in the B tier, but he's got a lot of use. So he can be used in royalty, he's always used in dungeons, and he wounds, he can wound a lot, he can stack these wounds, which does a lot of damage. He's got a very quick cooldown on his special, which also has a knockback. So he's a solid character, but gosh, he's a little bit like Minnie. You know, one hit on him and he's toast. So you have to really control him. You can't leave him alone with the AI. He's just gonna die. So you have to control him when you're playing with him. Okay, right, moving on. Scrooge, S tier, easy S tier. Right, so Scrooge, in my opinion, he is probably the third best support in the game, behind Mickey, because Mickey's got a better heal and has a knockback. So, but the thing about Scrooge, what you get out of him is just the buffing mechanics. He gives so many buffs, like get to 10 coins, and he gets them by using his heavy attack. Once he gets 10 coins, he then spends them. He then gives so many focus buffs, and these focus buffs make characters like Zerg, Minnie, you know, a lot of ranged characters hit so hard. He is a perfect support for buffing your characters, and comfortable S tier. Right, Snow White, I'm going to put her sort of mid A tier. So she's probably the third best melee, I'd say. Very interesting kit. She can do thorns damage. She can lure, which is kind of bizarre. She can lure. She has quite a nice special, but it doesn't have as big an area effect. She does give herself attack buffs, so she can hit quite hard. Great character, solid A tier. She's got some towers as well, so very useful in towers. Lots of people rave about Snow White, and I think she deserves to be in this A tier. Okay, moving on, we got Stitch. No. Stitch, unfortunately, is C tier. Now let me explain. He is probably the most annoying elite talent, and I say it's annoying because basically Stitch has a cooldown of 18 seconds, and his elite talent simply reduces the cooldown. Now, why couldn't they give him a decent elite talent instead and then just reduce his cooldown? I think Kabam kind of screwed this one up with Stitch. He could be a decent character, he could be a B tier character, but you're basically playing with two talents. You have to play with this elite talent in order to get the most out of him. A bit squishy, just a bit lackluster, so yeah, kind of top end of the C tier in my opinion. Okay, Sully. Now, I'm putting Sully in the C tier. There's just better tanks, quite plain and simple. He does have a lure in his kit, which is kind of cool. He does have a decent area of effect. He can do decent damage as a tank, and he can give himself a bit of armor, but compared to the other tanks in this game, I just don't think he does enough. Right, Tiana. I love Tiana. I'm going to put her next to... I'm going to put her here, okay. So, Tiana, alongside Evil Queen, really, amazing royalty character. She can knock back, which is amazing. She throws a potion up in the air and it will go and land on the character with the least health. It'll knock back the enemies around them. She'll also cleanse. She has a very, very good heal as well. I love Tiana. Yeah, easy A tier. Now, Tink, Socks fan, in my club you'll be happy. Well, probably not. You'll probably want to higher than this, but I think Tink is a decent range. She has a lot of damage. She has a lot of damage. When she goes supernova, she can do so much damage. She's just a bit squishy. She's very, very squishy for a range, so you need some decent characters to protect her. Like Wally, for example, would be great protection for her. So when you can get her into this supernova state, her basic attacks are pretty huge. They do a lot of damage. So yeah, decent ranged. Moving on, we've got Tron. Now, I'm not going to rank Tron. If I did, it would be, you know, on the basis of a tier list. Unlike Jack Skellington, I think, you know, with Jack, I can make a pretty good assumption, and I've seen footage of him, and, you know, he's fantastic. With Tron, I just don't know. So I would probably put him in the A tier, maybe B tier. I'm going to leave him unranked just for the purposes of the fact that he is a beta character and I don't know enough about him. Anyway, moving on, we've got Ursula. I really just, I think she's probably one of the worst characters in this game. Now, if there was a D tier, you know, she might be in it. But let me explain. She is a selfish tank. I know a lot of people have really struggled to make Ursula even moderately useful. She's got some interesting contract mechanic which can give her like a lot of armor when she kills enemies with them. But for what she does as a tank, she doesn't do anything for your team. She's just very selfish and just a pretty useless tank in general. Okay, now we've got Violet. And despite not having traits, I don't think it matters. I really don't. I think Violet is S tier. Now, because she doesn't heal and also because she doesn't have any towers, you could potentially argue she's A tier, but I'm going to stick her with S tier. I just think, look, I playtested her, and I playtested her only at level 50, and the force field that she can generate was insane, right? Like, it took... Ranged couldn't really penetrate through it. The force field's massive, by the way, because it's based on her defense. So she can make a massive force field which practically mitigates ranged. If you've got her elite talent equipped, it gives some resistance to tank and melee enemies as well. And the armor gain is huge. She can give up to 20% armor. You know, if you've got her signature ability unlocked, she'll give 20% armor every time she uses this special. You know, the special has a quite high cooldown, but the force field lasts for 10 seconds. So there's only 5 seconds between when you're without this force field. It can be destroyed, but yeah. What she does for the team is so unique compared to any other support. It's all about the fact that she can give this armor and this force field. She also shocks. It's like perma shock on the enemies, even if it's a tiny bit of shock. But that helps characters like Zerg that do more damage on enemies that already have shock. So she works so well with so many characters. Like, as I said, Mr. Incredible earlier, fantastic with her dad. And yeah, S tier in my opinion. Alright, last two. We've got Woody. I'm going to put Woody here. Okay? Woody has such a unique kit. There's just so much that he can do that others characters can't. And right now in the game, he might not get the most use out of the unique stuff he can do, but he's so unique. I'll just quickly run over a couple of things. So he puts warrants on characters, which stops them getting buffs. When he defeats those characters, it causes a heal for your team. He's basically a hybrid melee ranged. If you hold down his heavy, he shoots a gun. So, you know, he's basically... You can basically play him as a ranged if you want to. He can pull characters out of the midst of battle with his special. You know, he's got like this lasso and he pulls them and he kicks them. He can also stifle enemies, which stops them using their special abilities. There's so much in his kit that is amazing, but it's just about, you know, a lot of it comes down to like player skill and understanding his kit. And I think for that reason, you know, Woody is in the A tier. Okay, and then lastly, we've got Aladdin. I'm going to put Aladdin, you know, with Scar at the bottom of this A tier. Now, the reason being is Aladdin doesn't really have any towers, so for me, his usefulness is a bit limited. However, he does an insane amount of damage for a melee. He's a little bit like Scar in the sense that he's very squishy. I think he depends a lot on player skill. I haven't quite hit the spot with him yet. I struggle to get the most out of him, but that's probably on me. I also don't have his talents leveled that high, but I can recognize that he is a great character and he can do great things and deserves this spot in the A tier. Okay guys, that was a long video. I'm sorry it took so long, but I wanted to explain each character and the positioning. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.